Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I thank you for joining me for another episode. And this week, I'm featuring it's kind of special. I have Megan Green on, and she runs the conference Midwest Craft Con. Now, you guys have heard the ladies from Craftcation on before. And so for those of you who haven't been able to make it out to California, this is another conference that could potentially be a great opportunity for you to attend and grow. And it's in, as it says, the Midwest. But I'll have Megan give us lots more details. Megan, thank you so much for being my guest and welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Oh, I appreciate you taking the time to spend this with me. But before we start, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I am based out of Columbus, Ohio. My personal background is I'm a self-taught crafter. I own a soap business called Stinky Bomb Soap, where we specialize in making soaps in the shape of hand grenades and in state shapes, specifically Ohio, because I'm here in Columbus, Ohio. And I also am a craft show organizer. I've been running and organizing a show called Craft and Outlaws, which is in its 12th year. I've been running it for almost 9 years now. And most recently, I've taken on the helm of co-founding Midwest Craft Con, which is now a 501c3 nonprofit, and it's a creative conference. And I do all of that here in Columbus. I'm a wife. I've got 2 small kids, and I just kind of do all of those things working around my kids' school schedules.
And when do you sleep, Megan?
I sleep really well. Sleeping is never a problem for me. I could sleep all day long, but I just tend to be very focused in on knowing what I need to do, when it needs to get done. And I think, like most creatives, I'm really good with deadlines. So
Yes.
When things are looming, I just try to crank as much out as I can. But because I've been doing it for so long, especially the event planning, I just have a lot of spreadsheets and a lot of to-do lists. And with Midwest Craft Con, I'm one of 3 organizers, and my other partners are both craft show organizers too. So whenever I feel that I am slacking or not being able to, keep my end of what needs to happen finished or accomplished, I can just reach out to my partners and say, hey, that's probably not going to happen, or something's going on and I'm really busy, and they're more than happy and willing to pick up kind of the slack. And again, we're all there to help and be a support structure for one another. So yeah, it helps to have friends, and I have an assistant for the craft show. Yeah. And so it's a strength in numbers game.
Okay. So thank you for actually explaining the difference. And I would like us to just talk more in depth about each one. So Craft and Outlaws is a craft fair, whereas Midwest Craft Con is more of an educational conference for makers.
Yeah, it's kind of been an evolution for me. So I've been a creative and a maker, and I've sold on Etsy. I think originally I started selling on Etsy in a completely different format, probably around maybe 2005, 2006. Mm-hmm. And I started selling and attending at Craft and Outlaws, which was one of the first kind of indie alternative craft shows in Columbus. Shows had already formed in New York and in California, but there wasn't really an outlet in Ohio that would allow you to make and sell things outside of traditional art and craft fairs. Mm-hmm. So it was really kind of the first craft show of its kind in Ohio. And I just kind of started slowly selling my work there. And it was started by a woman named Liz Racino Wright, who now lives in the Portland, Oregon area. And she was just looking for a place to sell her goods, and she couldn't get accepted in any of the shows. And that's how Craft and Outlaws was formed. It was held in the back of a bar down in kind of the arts district in Columbus. And she originally had maybe 45 or 50 people, and just people were lined up outside the door waiting to get in. And the buzz was there, and everyone was really excited about it. And I was able to sell, I think it was in the 3rd year of the show was when I sold. And then I slowly as she was starting to realize that she was going to move and attend grad school, she asked if people would be willing to kind of, keep it going. And I just kind of stepped up, as did another small group of crafters and makers. And I somehow just kind of found myself in the position of taking on the leadership role. Like, I was the one who was willing to go and talk to the venues about contracts. And I was the one who was willing to go out and seek sponsors. And the other people were there just kind of as a support team, as a support structure. And then we slowly kept kind of moving to new venues. And it was originally just an event that happened once a year. And now, since I've been running and organizing it, we do 2 shows a year, one in the spring and one at the holiday show. And we moved from the back of a bar to a convention center. So we have more vendors. We have, there's so many more moving parts to make this happen, as well as, the budget has increased drastically, working with a convention center and hiring somebody to come and set up tables. Like, it's definitely still grounded in kind of that DIY movement back when it was started in 2005, but it's just evolved. But at the core, we're still working on building and supporting vendors and makers and giving them a place to sell. And that's just kind of, our mission is still there, but so many more components, like the handmade industry in general, like so many more components have grown, and places like Etsy that were once not a household name now are, and handmade has just flourished. I mean, we have craft shows in Columbus every weekend, sometimes multiple craft shows on the same weekend. So we've really watched it grow and morph. And then we do a lot of other community focused things throughout the year, like just to kind of keep our content consistent and not stagnant. So we do a lot of other things throughout the course of the year too, but it boils down to, for Outlaws, it boils down to the 2 shows. And then Midwest Craft Con was kind of the next evolution. I had known, who are now my partners, Grace DeBush, who used to be in charge of Crafty Supermarket. And then my other partner, Crafty Supermarket, is in Cincinnati. And my other partner, Britt Cherrick, runs a craft show in Akron called Crafty Mart. And we slowly just kind of put these feelers out there that we were looking to do this. Actually, Britt in Akron, her craft show had just become a nonprofit. And she was looking to get into educational component. And Midwest Craft Con, I should state, back in 2011, used to be called Midwest Craft Caucus. There was a woman here in Columbus who owns a consignment shop called Holy Craft, and she wanted to get these group of makers together. So she originally kind of started the first Craft Con in 2011, and we had speakers in from all over the Midwest, and we had a Etsy representative was kind of our keynote speaker. And it was 2 days, but it was all kind of condensed and short, and there weren't a great deal of after-hour activities. And after it all wrapped up, she said, that was a lot of fun, but I've got this business that I run that took so much work. If anybody wants to pick it up, like, I'll give you all the paperwork for it, but I've got all these other things that she was focused on. And so it sat dormant for a couple of years, and then I asked her, we were, I think, writing to a craft show. It might have been Crafty Supermarket in Cincinnati, but we were writing together to both set up and sell at the show. And I said, hey, I've been thinking about getting that back together. Like, what are your thoughts about that? And she was like, do it, take the name. Like, there's still a Facebook group for it. So I slowly started to redevelop the idea. At that point in time, Britt had formed the nonprofit, and Grace made basically an introduction and said, Britt would like to do this. Megan has been talking about doing this. And as Britt and I were exchanging ideas back and forth, Grace was just like, well, I really want to be a part of this too. And so it just somehow magically all worked. And again, doing Craft and Outlaws mostly by myself now, it's been amazing to have 2 partners who are also craft show organizers, who are not afraid to get dirty, who know already what it takes to work with venues, to, set up tables, to work with the general public, or, in our case for CraftCon, for, the attendees, knew what it was like to work with sponsors and, build spreadsheets and create the content. So it just kind of slowly morphed. And then we had our first one in the first Midwest Craft Con in, we're on our 3rd year now. So our first one was in 2016 in Columbus. And we had about, in total, I think like 180 people were in attendance. And Lisa Congdon was one of our keynotes, as was Abby Glassenberg of While She Naps. And
Very
it
nice.
was awesome. We got people in from all over the place. We had no idea what we were doing. And actually, Britt had found out she was pregnant at some point and wound up having the baby about 2 weeks before the conference. So she had worked on all of this programming for, a good solid year. And then she wound up not even being able to attend
Oh,
herself.
no.
So Grace and I were even just doing it, just with shy of our other partner. But we figured it all out, and then Britt was able to come back without the baby in February of this year of 2017, and then we're moving forward again. We'll be in our third year, and so it's just really about, again, that evolution of, we were all makers. We were all craft show organizers, and then we realized that we needed to provide this content for our vendors. And really anymore, I mean, it's a big excuse to throw a great big giant party for our friends, and then we keep making new friends and bring in new speakers, and it's this really weird random thing that's kind of formed and morphed. But we're event planners, so we're dumb. We love doing this. We love taking on the stress. And yeah, it's just so much fun.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it, but I'm very impressed that you three throw this together, because just from talking to people who organize conferences, there's so much that goes into it behind the scenes. I have one friend who organizes an annual podcasting conference, and I'm amazed that he's able to put it on year after year and doesn't just walk away after, at the end of one. But
it's kind of like one of those things. I mean, if you have children, you'll experience it, or even if you have a small business, like you love doing it so much, and in the middle of it, half of the time you want to throw up your hands and say, like, we're never doing this again. Like, I'm ready to walk. But then once you're there and you get all that energy, and even afterwards, there's still so much buzz and excitement.
yeah.
And then you're just like, oh yeah, that's why we're going to do it again. So again, like right now we're still in the thick of it. Like, I've got a craft show that I'm organizing. I've got a craft conference that I'm organizing. And sometimes it's overwhelming and it's awful, and you just want to like flip the table. But I keep remembering, like, it's so much fun when we actually all get in a room, and like, there's so much that I learn. Just, I don't get to sit in on the content as much as I would like to, but even the stuff that I pick up from other people, from little conversations or stuff that I glean online from some of our attendees, like, I still learn so much. And I'm just hoping, that obviously they're in it for the full 3 days. So, they're learning so much. And at the end of the day, like, we exist as a craft show event organizers to help our friends, to help the small business community, specifically within that niche of handmade, because we're a special breed. We're small business owners, but we're makers and we're creatives, and it's hard to merge all those. It's hard to merge those two halves of your brain together.
Yeah, I know.
And so we exist. Again, it just means that everyone gets bigger and better and stronger, and it's hard also when you're at craft shows to meet your peers.
Because everyone's
you tend to. Yeah, so everyone's behind their table. So this is the way to, like, remove the tables and like have real conversations and make real networks, and and remove that. We're also always in front of our computer, so it's really nice to just like unplug for 3 days and chill and hang, and maybe have a cocktail and have a couple of laughs and meet some new people.
So let's talk about there are a couple of things I want to talk about. First of all, I know you said Midwest CraftCon is now a 501c3 organization. So for attendees, does that change anything on that side of it? I know as organizers and the ones who run the organization, it creates a different type of structure for you as far as the business aspect goes. But for say a maker who wants to attend, does that mean that their registration fee and anything that goes to Midwest CraftCon is tax deductible as a charitable contribution, or does it still stay as a business expense for education?
For the attendee, to my knowledge, it is still just a business expense that you get to write off.
Okay.
But where it really comes into play is, we have opportunities to get access for grants which means some of the content that would normally cost us, a small amount of money, gets a huge discount because a group or a organization has helped sponsored it.
Okay.
So for instance, one of the things that we do with Midwest Craft Con is we have a caravan. So our event is always in February. The concept behind that is it's kind of our downtime as creatives. The holiday shows are over. The spring shows haven't started. We're in the Midwest. It's cold. Everyone's still behind their computers. February is the perfect time to get everybody together to have a big giant craft party. So what we started to do was host a caravan tour. So we will put you on a bus. The seats are limited, but we take you out to different shops that support kind of the DIY craft community year round. So we take you to brick and mortar shops, and you get to experience what some of those stores are like that maybe you only see online, or maybe it's a store that sells your work, but again, you've never been there because you live in Pittsburgh, and again, we're in Columbus. Right. So we take you on these different tours, and for the 2018 year, we just got a grant from the Greater Columbus Arts Council, who is going to fund those caravan rides for us, which means we don't have to charge the small businesses to participate the way we once had to, and we can further discount the cost to ride the bus from the attendees. Like, it's basically, you still kind of have to pay for your lunch, and you still have to pay for anything that you want to buy along the way at all these different shops. But really, it's more the kind of the perks. And some of the swag are things that you can benefit on through the nonprofit status, but it really doesn't do much from the attendee standpoint. Us being a nonprofit, it's really more like the partnerships and the sponsorships become tax deductible for the small business owner, and then we get access to grant opportunities and grant writing. Okay,
very good. So let's talk about the workshops. What workshops can attendees expect to attend?
We're going to have, similar to any type of a small business conference or a business conference, we're going to have some traditional experiences like social media 101, an advanced class on social media. You can maybe take a class about, how to work on building or drafting better newsletters. And then we're also going to sprinkle in some content that has to do with, kind of staying in love with your craft. We'll give you tax advice from some tax experts, or contract advice from lawyers, how to grow your wholesale account. And then we're also going to have fun classes like, Betsy Greer is going to be one of our breakout instructors. I believe she's going to be speaking a little bit about, the cause that's pretty big in the handmade movement right now, craftivism. So she will talk a little bit about that. So there's also going to be a few social components. And there's also some personal well-being classes. Last year, we had a big all-in panel about depression and what that means to go through either a life-changing event or to be diagnosed with something, and what that means in your handmade business when it's just you, and you've been diagnosed with something that that prevents you from getting up in the morning. So we also get really deep and we can get really personal, but at the end of the day, it's designed to help you be prepared for either situations that you currently have in your business or things that you could experience in your business. We're also going to incorporate a lot of not only the business practices to help you build your business, but also kind of the creative side of your business. So we're going to incorporate a couple of hands-on workshops from a couple of groups around the Midwest. So you'll be able to learn things like, I think somebody might teach a shibori dyeing class. I'm sure there might be some painting courses, but just little things too, like when you're ready to shut off all the content that you've absorbed. And if you're feeling a little overwhelmed because you're like, oh, now I've got to redesign my website, or now I have to, really like start using those hashtags more. Like, we want to give you a chance to like break away from that overwhelming feeling that we can get as creatives when we're, inundated with information. We also want to give you a little bit of creative downtime. And then we also have, like evening activities. So we have a karaoke that we've done every year. We're going to do a late night pool party where we're going to show a movie. And then I think we're also going to add kind of an introverted space. So if you want to kind of break away, but still be a part of the group, but not be so, out there with other people, you can just kind of chill. I think at the moment we've tossed out the idea of like, it's going to be like an introverted room with puzzles. So again, you can still feel kind of crafty and dive in with a couple of people, but you don't really have to talk to anybody. Because if you've ever built, a really large puzzle, half of the time you're not talking to everybody. Yes. You're just looking at the corner pieces. So little things like that to just kind of break up the fun and add some icebreakers. But you'll still, at the end of the day, you're still going to get a ton of content to build your business. And then we have keynote speakers. We have Kelly Deal from the Breeders is going to give an inspirational talk. We have Crafty Chica, Kathy Cano Murillo, sorry if I mispronounced that, and then Gemma Corral are each going to be our keynotes. So you'll also be able to just kind of sit back, and you don't necessarily have to take notes for those. It's just hearing their story and hearing their journey. And at the end of the day, you get to meet and network all these attendees who also have a similar story. They're just not, put in front of a podium with a microphone, but you're going to get to meet these people from all over the Midwest who are doing exactly what you're doing. And at the end of the day, it's about building community.
And do you, not do you, but I know one of the things that you stress, not you, but on the website, when I was reading up about it, is that it's a business conference for mid-career makers. How do you define a mid-career maker, and who is the target that you are really trying to pull in to this?
As we were working on kind of creating our core mission and what we wanted to do, it really fell back to a lot of the vendors that were selling at our shows. Those are individuals who have been doing it for maybe 3 to 5 years. So we aren't going to provide the content that tells you how to create an Etsy shop from scratch. Right. We aren't going to give you the knowledge to start a WordPress and start the blog. Like, ideally, we want the people that attend the conference to have already had some of that experience underneath their belt. Okay. So someone who's been doing craft shows for a while, or who has started to, sell their work online, or someone who has been doing workshops for the last couple of years, someone who has slowly started to build an audience, started to build a following, and they're really at that point where, like, they're not really sure which way to go next. Like, do they have to keep hustling and do all these things, or should they maybe sit down for a moment and focus and realize that maybe this one avenue is where they should put their energy for the next few years? Mm-hmm. So it's really all about, we wanted the content to be slightly more involved. Yes. Because we felt there were a lot of those types of classes that already existed. Yes. How to build an Etsy shop is a really good prime example. So we just wanted it to be a little bit more advanced, and specifically we were coming from the mindset of, these are our vendors. We want to give them the tools to get to the next place. So whether that's trade show, wholesale, building up retail partnerships, that is the person that we are trying to reach.
Okay. And I appreciate that, because you're right. There's a lot of information, and there are a lot of resources for people just starting out, which is a huge pool. But then one of the things I found is, as you grow and as you learn and as you advance, the pool gets the pool of resources and educational sources of information like this gets smaller, and it's harder to find like conferences like this, or resources where you can go and expect next level teaching, not the basics. So that's really good.
Yeah. And again, a lot of it comes back to, like, I think about where I was when we were first starting the conference with Stinky Bomb. I was at that weird place where I'd had some wholesale accounts. I had tried working with a rep, and that didn't really work out. Like, what was the next step for me? Mm-hmm. And I knew that I wasn't alone in that quest and in that journey. And it's really hard to find that type of content. And it's still, it's still a struggle to make sure that we're giving our audience, our attendees, exactly what they want. And we also have a Facebook group where former, current, soon to be present attendees, can ask questions and advice. And we always kind of gauge, what kind of advice are they asking for? And then that's something that we need to put into the structure for the upcoming conference. So who do we know, or who can we reach out to help provide those questions? So, so when they're at the conference, they get that, like, a real in-depth, educational content, class. Sorry, I kind of rambled there.
No, that's okay. So just I just realized we haven't said when this is going to be. Now, this episode is going live in October. So that gives you enough time to plan ahead, because Midwest Craft Con is from February 16th to 18th of 2018, and it's in Columbus, Ohio. And Megan, do you cut off ticket sales at any point?
At the moment, no.
Okay.
We have not experienced a sold out show yet.
Okay.
So at the moment, we are trying to sell, or we have capacity for 250 people.
Okay.
We actually have capacity for maybe like 400, but we still want to keep it small.
Yeah.
And at the most, I think, again, we were maybe around 180, maybe 200 people that first year. So our early birds are now closed. You can still buy your 3-day pass, and it's $249. There is a room block reserved because we are held at a hotel. So at any point in time, you can just get up and go to your room or go to the pool or go work out. So it's kind of like an all-inclusive style feel. And then we give you a link to get your room at the discounted rate. And I believe in December or January, we open up day passes. And again, we still try to sell out those 3-day experiences, whether it's the early bird or the normal day pass. And if we see that we're not reaching our ticket sales, we open up day passes. But again, we're really trying to get everybody in for the full 3 days, because there's just so much to experience, and you really get all the benefits of it if you get that 3-day pass.
Right.
And then also in December, we open up scholarships. So if for whatever reason you're having some financial difficulties, again, maybe something personal has happened in your life that's prevented you to move forward in your business, we do have a scholarship form that opens up, and we have a donation button. Anybody that buys a ticket can, add another $5, $10 to their ticket, and that goes towards the scholarship fund. And then we also get sponsors who help support and sustain that, where we can give a couple of passes away to people. So you can look for that on the website as well. And again, it should open up around December. And we only have a limited number of tickets that we can give out at that scholarship. So if you think that you can afford it, I definitely suggest, you look into the 3-day pass. But if you're feeling like, you want a chance, the opportunity to get a free ticket, you can certainly apply for the scholarship fund.
That's very generous of you guys to do that.
Again, it's one of those, we, as a nonprofit, I guess that is one of the perks that you could benefit from, which I didn't touch on. So that is something that we, feel is important, because it's not, by no means is the ticket cost cheap. But at the same time, other conferences have much higher ticket cost than we do. So, and if you really kind of break it down, 3 days for the amount of education and the amount of content and the amount of classes that you're going to get, it's really a bargain discount.
Yeah.
And we also, we are firm believers of, all of our teachers are paid. So that's another big component for us, is we really believe, they're the ones who are selling the content, and they're the ones that are selling their experiences. So we want to make sure that we are paying all of our speakers, and, giving them lodging for the weekend, and trying to keep, their travel as inexpensive as it can. So a lot of the ticket cost goes to making sure that, we're compensating our speakers.
Okay. And that's very good too. Now, how about virtual tickets for folks who can't make it out to Columbus, Ohio?
That is something that we have gone back and forth about, because a lot of the content that you have is, you have 3 to 4 classes to choose from in about an hour and a half time frame. So when we announce our schedule, you have to kind of decide, well, which class do I want to sit in on? Mm-hmm. And then we have a lot of people who are feeling, a little hurt because they really want to take this class, or they really want to hear that instructor. So we kind of label it as you choose your own creative adventure. Mm-hmm. And the class that you sit in on is, the one that is kind of speaking to you. Mm-hmm. So what we have gone back and forth about is there a way that we can record it and then send it out to people later? But again, it's a whole other logistic that at the moment we can't financially fund or support. Okay. And then we also feel it gets into the kind of an infringement of an intellectual property, where then we have to have the speakers sign off on allowing us to share that content.
Oh, right. I didn't think about that.
So we, it seems like it's not really necessarily like a legal issue, but a lot of these teachers, do kind of these conference workshops throughout the year. And sometimes they have the same content that they're selling, but this is how they are making their living. And we don't want to necessarily feel like we are giving it away for free. So we have that Facebook group where you can always check in with somebody and say, hey, did you take so-and-so's class? I really wanted to sit down on it. I didn't get to. Like, do you mind if we meet up over lunch and maybe you can share your notes? And I sat in on this class so I can tell you how awesome this person was and what I learned from her. So it's kind of a weird, like, we would like to do that, but at the same time, it's kind of it's walking a fine line. And again, we really want to be respectful of our speakers and their content and their intellectual property.
Okay. That makes perfect sense, actually. I know that virtual tickets are convenient, but I never actually stopped to think that, there were other ramifications.
And again, it could just be us. I mean, I'm sure other people have worked it out and they're okay with it. But at the moment, it's a big undertaking that we don't really want to get involved with. Like, it's hard enough to plan 3 days when people are in front of us. It's another thing to, make sure that all the feeds work and everything's recorded well. And but at the end of the day, we just want to be respectful of our folks and our teachers.
Okay. Now, what direction do you see Midwest CraftCon growing in down the road?
Well, we've talked a lot at the beginning about rotating and going to different cities, different states. But as we are still learning and taking in each conference, brings a whole new set of logistical challenges. And, we're kind of hesitant to move it the way that we maybe once intended to do, specifically because I am the one that holds on to a lot of the props and the banners. And I wouldn't be, as much as I would love to move it to another city, like I also think about, like, I don't really want to have to drive to another city or to another state and, have rent a U-Haul and pack all that stuff in there. Like, it'd just be really nice to just drive like 10 minutes away from my house and or 10 minutes away from my studio where I keep all of my production stuff. And just kind of know that once it's done, like, I don't have to make another 5-hour commute to get back home. But it's still something that we consider and we discuss, and we've made so many great partnerships with so many different groups around the Midwest. So it's still something that we talk about. And then we're also still trying to figure out, what are the needs of a lot of our attendees, the vendors at craft shows, like what else can we do as a nonprofit group to help our maker friends. So we have a couple of ideas, and a lot of it still requires funding. And so we're still doing a lot of research into what we could do to help our friends and our attendees. So right now it's still just, we're still trying to learn what we're doing and perfect what we're doing, and then see if there's a way that we can take it on the road or do something else in the way of, like, online presence. But we still haven't figured out what that is, and again, how to make it happen successful.
Well, I'm going to be watching you, because that was kind of a selfish question I was asking. Because we were talking earlier about moving to Colorado, and it's all new. I don't know anything out there, or what the scene is over there. And one of the things I like to do is know, well, what's around me, what resources do I have? Is Colorado it's the West? It's West still.
West.
So, Western Crafting Conference, I mean, I know there's Craftcation, but that's in California.
Yeah.
And so, in my head, I'm thinking, wow, what would it take to do this? I don't know that I could do what you and the other ladies who run Midwest CraftCon are doing. But it just sounds like a really good thing that you're doing for your community. Now, I know there will be people probably from outside of Ohio, maybe in the surrounding areas, who, for them, it's a conference that's closer than, some other one that's, across the country. And so I was, just wondering, like, when is Midwest CraftCon going to shift out of Ohio?
Again, we are certainly always talking about it. And what has been really easy for us is because we were all so deeply rooted in kind of the handmade scene. I personally have done shows in Pittsburgh, Chicago, parts of Michigan. We have, maker friends that are in Indianapolis. So we already had this large network, and everybody is constantly like, oh, like if you move here, like I could help you talk to this person. But I think another big component for us moving is like we kind of have to really have a big ground crew that we know we can rely on, because logistically it's a lot. You've got to check the venue. You have to have support from the community. Because I'm so deeply rooted here in Columbus, I know all the shops, I know all the shop owners, I know some of the other craft show organizers that are here in the city. We kind of need to just make sure that, if we can move to another city, that we have that ground team, kind of like that street team in place, to really make it successful. Otherwise, I'm going to have to keep driving, to that city, every other couple of weekends and, meet with shop owners and talk to them. And so until we feel that we can bring somebody else in from another state, who could really be that kind of that sounding board and that representative for us. And it's not like they don't exist, and it's not like we haven't been approached. It's just, it's such a big undertaking. And the logistical aspects of, like, it would be hard to go to Pittsburgh because I don't really know that town. Like, I've been there many times, but like I couldn't tell you the best way to get from the airport to wherever the hotel might be, and I don't know all the craft shops the way that I do here. So
I get that. Yeah. So if you're listening and you want to find out more about Midwest Craft Con, go to midwestcraftcon.com. I will have a link directly to the website. It has all the information. You can see the speakers for 2018. They have some really good people lined up for 2018. And you can also buy your tickets. And like Megan said, there's a button that you can donate if you want to donate to the scholarship fund for someone else who might not be able to attend. Megan, can we talk a bit about Crafted Outlaws? I had a couple of questions about that.
Yeah, hit me.
So one of the things you mentioned was that the genesis of it was somewhat rooted in the fact that the person who started it wasn't able to get into regular crafting fairs or craft fairs. Now, Crafted Outlaws, you describe it as an alternative craft fair in Columbus. Specifically, what type of makers do you welcome to Crafted Outlaws?
We tend to have, and it's a vision and an aesthetic that the founder, Liz Racino Wright, had, and it just so happens that it does happen to be my aesthetic as well. Mm-hmm. It's definitely a vendor that is a little bit more edgy. They can be a little bit more sassy, irreverent. I'm not opposed to people having swear words on things. I'm not opposed to, supporting kind of a feminist style of craft. Okay. So we tend to have a very kind of, all of our vendors tend to have a very specific voice, niche, personal style and aesthetic. Having been in the scene for as long as I have, I've seen people that have originated ideas, and then I've seen people that have copied those ideas. Like, we are still seeking out the people that are the originators, and who are willing to take to risk in their craft and in their art. And we tend to gravitate towards those type of people, even if you kind of have kind of a gothic, edgier tone to your work. Again, I'm not afraid of skulls and bones and in jewelry or in screen printed designs or on t-shirts. Like I support and wear all of those types of things and have that work on my walls. So we're definitely, we walk a fine balance where, we also have some work that's a little bit more whimsical and a little bit more light, because at the end of the day, we are trying to sell to consumers. Not everybody has my weird niche appreciation of kind of gothic weird art. So we try to walk a fine balance. There's definitely some people there with a softer side, but their work is still original and beautiful. And that's the type of vendor that we gravitate towards. Okay. So if you feel like, your work is maybe not fitting in some of the craft show markets because they tend to be maybe a little bit more traditional, or maybe tend to have a little bit more of like a I've seen a lot of shows that kind of have like an athletic lean to it, where they're kind of supporting the sports team in their town or city or state. We're really not trying to look towards that Pinterest style of art with mason jars and state shapes. Like, I mean, some of those people are at our shows too, but it's definitely, it's very, very small, and it's a really curated event. So we really try to narrow down and find the ones that have the most unique voice. And that's who we're looking for.
Okay, good. And that was my next question was, is it juried, as in, you vet each vendor that you have at the show? And it sounds like you do.
Yes, we do. Yeah, everything gets juried, and we tend to look at, your photos, your prices, how long you've been doing it. Sometimes we go down the portal of, kind of zooming in, like, what's the stitch work look like? Like, I kind of know what that should look like at this point. Am I seeing a lot of loose threads? Like, we just want to make sure that, if somebody's going to buy something for $40 or $80, that, they're not going to feel like something's going to crumble the minute that they get home. Yeah. So we try to look at all those things. But at the same time, when you have a couple hundred people applying, you're also trying to do that as quickly as you can, because juries can take, 3 to 5 hours. So you're trying to go through those as quickly as possible. But the ones that kind of come up that maybe give you some red flags, then we go in and dive a little bit deeper and look at what you're doing, to see maybe why is your work underpriced, or why is it overpriced, or why have I seen that before?
And so your next show is coming up November 11th and 12th of 2017. Do you open, do you but can anyone from across the country apply, or is it local for just Ohio residents?
No, we will accept you as far as you want to come. Actually, this year, for the first time ever, we have somebody coming in from Alaska. So I'm really excited. I continue to want to reach out to her to see if she's just doing a craft show circuit, or if maybe she has family in Columbus, because it is rare that we get somebody from that far away applying to our show. But we definitely have more of a Midwest draw to us. So I would say maybe out of the 100 vendors that are going to be at our event in November, maybe 50 of them are from Central Ohio, outlying areas of Ohio. And the rest come from all over the Midwest. So, and that's one of the other things that kind of makes our show different and unique, is the level of talent. And they're not doing the craft show circuit every weekend. They're not the same vendor that you're going to see at any given point here in town. So it's a unique experience.
Okay. So you have one show in November, and when is your second show?
It's typically in the spring, and I'm a little behind, and I haven't coordinated the dates for it yet. I'm meeting with the venue next week, but sometime between March and April of 2018 will be our spring show.
Okay. All right. Now, before I let you go, we have to talk about your Etsy shop.
Sure.
All right. So how did you get into soap making?
I consider myself kind of a craft dabbler. I've always made things and explored things, and soap was just one of those mediums that I picked up along the way. I was like, I'm going to see what that's like. So I made cold process soap, which is where you take a fat and the lye, and they've got to cure for a period of time before you can touch it. And I always think of it as like a Fight Club style soap, where you have to have the goggles and the yellow gloves on. And then I've made melt and pour soap, which is, you can go to Michael's or Joann's and buy basic glycerin soap, melt it down, add some ingredients to it, and, basically put it in like a silicone ice cube tray, and then you can have soap within 20 minutes. Basically, for as long as it takes to dry, that's how long you get the instant gratification of a bar of soap. So I dabbled, and I knew how to make it. And I had done a couple other things kind of creatively and had other Etsy shops. But the soap kind of formed in like 2008. My husband has a side business in a very specific niche market where he makes resin replicas of grenades and bayonets for prop makers, reenactors, and he had his studio at our house right after the birth of our first child, and he had a World War II hand grenade on our table, and I was just at home with a newborn, and I was like, oh, that'd be really funny, just go to the craft store and get some melt and pour soap, and a couple hours later, I had a hot pink hand grenade bar of soap, which was really just to, I was bored with this newborn child. And so I thought it was really funny, and it just kind of morphed from there. And I don't know how I came up with the name. It just kind of came, and the domain was available. And I did some research, and nobody else had made it. And because I'd already been on Etsy before and had done craft shows before, I kind of learned so much from that. So it made the whole process just that much easier. And it was really easy because it's basically, you can take just a couple of photos and it's the same product mass produced over and over and over again, but it's me mass producing it instead of a factory. So, it was really easy because I just got to make one photo listing. And then every time it sold, I could just relist the same thing and the description didn't change.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of how it all morphed. And then anytime another idea for a mold came up, I would just reach out to my husband. And when he had time in between, day job and the newborn and his side business, he would, spit out a new mold for me. And then I would just slowly kind of perfected what I wanted it all to look like. And, just all kind of quickly out of nowhere, and really just out of a, humoring myself being bored at home, it started.
Yeah, I find it funny that sometimes the best ideas are just the ones that just hit you for no reason. There's no deep market research that went into into it. It's just an idea that stood out to you. You did it, it worked, and you're just going with it.
Yeah, I just kind of ran with it, and I got a little lucky there for a while, because nobody else had been doing it, and my product photos were pretty good. So I was getting, page views, and I was already in craft shows. And again, it always helps when you're applying for a craft show to have a really unique concept or idea. So I was getting into craft shows, and I was getting into retail outlets, and I was just slowly growing it, not knowing what I was doing. And it always kind of got to the point where it was always manageable. It never spiraled out of control. And occasionally I would bring people in to kind of help with holiday craziness. But it was just a funny, silly idea. I mean, I just had so much time on my hands.
It's working.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you manage your time between organizing the conference, the craft show, and running your own business? Not just the Etsy shop, but you have an independent e-commerce site as well. What do your typical business days look like? I'm sure that seasonally it changes when you're ramping up for the conference or a show. But how do you do it all?
Well, I've shifted priorities a lot. Where when Stinky Bomb was first started, I poured all of my time and energy into building that up. And then, trying to find a way to like squeeze it into the craft show and still sell stuff while running the show. Mm-hmm. And just as this, evolution of my, creative career has grown, the soap has actually started really taking a back seat. Mm-hmm. And I don't push it as much as I used to. And every once in a while, I even forget to renew listings on Etsy. And I've kind of even taken down a lot of the e-commerce side of it, where I'm not, trying to push and market it. And I'm just kind of letting Etsy do its thing, because all these other outlets are pulling me and require so much more of my time. So at the moment, my everyday kind of looks like, I drop the kids off at school. If I'm lucky, I can go straight into my studio space, which is about maybe 10 minutes away from my house, and all of my soap is housed there. So if I'm lucky, I can go in and make a couple of orders, or, fill a couple of orders. But the soap is basically just kind of running on its own right now. And It's not doing as well as it probably could, but only because I'm doing all these other activities, that do require so much more of my time. And sometimes I miss it. Like other people, would go for long walks or, do yoga. Like I loved making soap. It was so cathartic, despite the fact that it was, a hand grenade soap. It was very zen for me. Yeah. So there are times where I still miss it. And so I'm not doing as many craft shows as much, just because, my kids' schedules have changed, my schedules have changed. So it still exists. And I'm still, every once in a while, I fill orders for paying customers. And then I fill order for some of my local consignment shops, but I'm certainly not pushing and hustling the soap as I once was.
Yeah.
And at the moment it tends to be, I go to the studio, maybe fill a couple of orders, and then I'm really focused on, emails. And like today I drafted, kind of the floor plan for the holiday show. And there's a lot of meetings now where I used to like, oh, I love making soap because I don't ever have to have meetings and I'm never going to be an adult. And now it's, I'm meeting with, potential partners. I'm sitting in on grant sessions. Like at this point, like it's really all about like the community involvement, and it does require a great deal of meetings. So I'm I'm in a lot of meetings in between, answering emails and picking up kids, and every once in a while soap is inserted back into my life, but
Yeah.
but I don't do it as much as I would like. But at the same time, I also really do enjoy what I'm doing right now.
I know. I was going to say, it sounds like you have, a new passion. Not that you've lost the passion for the soap, but with the conference and the shows, that's also something you're really passionate about. So it's not like you're really losing.
Yeah, other than losing some sales, to be perfectly honest. And every once in a while, I'm like, oh, someone still likes my stuff. They're buying my soap, and like, oh, I gotta go to the studio and get that out. Like, not that I'm complaining about it, but I do. It's like every once in a while, I still get that little rush, like, oh, somebody bought my thing. And anymore, it's pretty rare that somebody is buying something, just because I'm not pushing it aggressively. But yeah, I still get that little charge, like when you first started your shop, and people are buying stuff that you don't know who they are. They just randomly found you. So I still get that every once in a while.
Megan, what advice, I should say, would you give to an Etsy seller who's listening right now and wants to grow their business? And it doesn't necessarily have to be just about growing on Etsy, but as a creative business person, what advice would you give to that person?
My advice has always been that specifically Etsy is one component to what your creative business is going to be. And it's a great incubator if you're just getting started and you just want to test things out. Like the listing fees are so inexpensive. And if you have a good product with great photography, like it will take you far in that online world of Etsy. But also knowing that, it is rare to have kind of internet Etsy gold. I think that we are kind of sold a lot of times that, it's just going to randomly magically happen. And that's not the case. You still have to work really hard on it. And it's so very rare for that to actually happen. Like it's happened for a couple of people, but, and it is a business, you don't just, it's not a field of dreams where you build it, they will come. You have to work really, really hard on it. And, if you're just going to have an Etsy platform, like be on social media and push all of that stuff to your Etsy shop. If you get to the point where, you want to test and experience, a website on its own and host your own e-commerce site, push all that traffic over there. And then eventually, you have to try different things. So try a craft show. It doesn't have to be a big craft show. It doesn't have to be, like a Craft and Outlaws version of a show. Pop-up shows are a great starting point, great incubator to get feedback from customers. Like you learn so much being out in the public, in terms of, how people interact with it, what kind of questions do they have, and all of that knowledge can go back into making better descriptions for your products, be it, through Etsy or through your own online stuff. Like all of that stuff should be, if people are asking, what's the best way to take care of it, like that should be in your Etsy description.
Yeah.
Like I make this amazing fiber crocheted hat. This is the best way to care for it, or these are the different ways that you can wear it. So get yourself out there in the public as well. Don't just think that it's all going to happen online and you never have to leave your house and you can quit your day job. It takes a really long time for people to quit their day job. And then you have this whole other, entity to deal with, because then you're the only one who's going to hold yourself accountable once you don't have a boss anymore. So know that you might have to try a lot of different things, and sometimes some experiences don't work and sometimes you get great success, but the ones that you fail on, take a moment after sometimes you might feel bad for yourself because it didn't work out, but take a moment and realize, well, what did you learn from that experience? And what can you do to make that experience better? Or how can you avoid getting into that trap that maybe, cost you a lot of time and, really caused you to maybe lose some money. So really know that there are other options out there, and Etsy is one small part of your handmade portfolio.
Yes. Thank you so much, because I try and say that as much as possible, not to dissuade anyone from selling on Etsy, but it's part of what should be more of your business. Etsy is not your business. It's just a part.
Yeah. Again, like I could be working the craft show circuit right now, and Stinky Bomb could be, pun intended, blowing up right now, and I could be back doing craft shows, but I can't keep up with that level of commitment. But
Yeah.
so for me, like I'm a good example. Like if you don't work on your shop and you aren't actively promoting, you maybe get a couple of sales a week if you're lucky. Versus if you're actively engaged and working and making one-on-one relationships with your customers, you're going to keep getting more of those sales. And again, it's a great deal of what, CraftCon provides you. Like there's never just one bucket that's going to get you,
everything.
Yeah, like you as a small business owner, there's so many different hats that you need to wear, and if you're lucky, again, you can find some success and maybe hire an assistant, but even that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight unless you inherited or came into a great deal of money that you can do that right off the bat. But most people don't have that experience. Most people are slowly, organically trying to build something, and everybody is making mistakes.
Yes.
So when you feel like, oh, it's just not working for me, like it's not working for a lot of people, but find the people that you like and respect, and, don't copy what they do, but, be inspired by what they do and say, well, how could I do it, but make it my own? That's the other big thing is don't steal your competition. There's plenty of room in the marketplace for everybody, but it's really about like finding your own identity and your own voice, and customers pick up on that so very much because they want to feel like they're getting something special and that's one of a kind. So continue to find that, and people will eventually find you.
Thank you for saying that. Now, Megan, I don't know if you're keeping up with all the changes that are going on at Etsy, and there's been a little bit of turmoil there recently.
I've seen it. Yep.
Yes. So I'm going to ask you for one more piece of advice, because I glanced at the forums and then I quickly jumped out. What would you say to someone who is kind of feeling discouraged and confused by what's going on and wondering whether or not they've, staying with Etsy is the right decision for them?
This is purely me just like having spent some time thinking about it. I'm curious if it's really just we are the ones as makers who are feeling it, and if the consumer even cares.
Right.
I've not looked into it. I have absolutely no idea if there's any truth to that. But so I'm wondering if we as makers are complaining or like I'm out of here and I'm going to close up my shop forever. I don't know how many consumers are actively aware of all the drama. Like, yes, from a seller's perspective, like it's a little unnerving. You don't know what's going to happen, and they keep changing these policies. And I realized today on our private CraftCon Facebook group that like some of the shipping policies changed, like returns, like they would automatically, even if you always stated that you don't take returns, that there was an active link where they turned a bunch of people's forms or shops over so that they would accept returns. And I had never heard of that. Again, somebody just happened to post it, and that's how I stay relevant on what's going on with Etsy, because my attendees tell me, and then I go into my shop and I'm like, oh, sure enough, that's what they did to Stinky Bomb, and I'll go up and edit it and change it back to what I want and need for those few sales that I get. But I would say, again, if you're just starting out, it's still really good to just kind of test the market and go with it and try and learn, but just know that it could get better. It could get a lot worse. Mm-hmm. But if you're just starting out, like it's easy to just kind of roll with it and use what is working to test out your business. But I'm almost worried that, I feel like we are the only ones in my small little handmade bubble. We're the only ones that are really complaining about it. I think from the tech side and like the venture capitalist side and the boardroom side of things. I'm sure those people are talking about it too, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time before the consumer actually responds by withholding their dollars from Etsy.
Yeah.
Uh,
I agree with you on that, because I feel the same way. I think that a lot of what we see is on the back end, or a lot of what people are reacting to is what's happening on the back end. For someone who doesn't sell and it's just on Etsy shopping, I'm pretty sure they have no clue what's going on, or, you know, all the turmoil that's going on. And one of the things I think is, okay, Etsy is a business. I realize that.
Yes.
And a lot of the changes are growing pains because it's a business that has realized it needs to make some adjustments. And, you know, when you make adjustments, sometimes they hurt, and then things get better. We don't know how long the pain will last, but, you know, really it's, and I can't speak for anyone else. It's that pain is relative, you know, in the grand scheme of things, and who feels the pain the worst, or, you know, the most is, I don't know how that's judged, but I do think that the pandemonium is not really necessary. Not because I think, you know, Etsy is going to come out, you know, shining or whatever. I have no idea. I have no clue. Nobody there tells me anything. So I don't know. I'm just thinking of it as a business that's making adjustments and growing. I try not to go into the forums if I can, just because sometimes the negative speak gets into your head, even if you weren't thinking that way. But when you hear, you know, enough of it, you're like, okay, maybe I believe all this. You know, it affects you negatively too.
Well, and I think, I mean, for me, it's also, you know, I'm not on the forums. I'm busy trying to working. So if you're on the forums all day long and that's scaring you off, I mean, get off the forums and start promoting and start doing things.
Yeah.
Again, Etsy that I'm aware of, Etsy's still going to be there. I don't think it's going to go anyway anytime soon. I don't know that any other platform is going to come up and really give it some serious competition, at least not for a while. But again, no one's calling me. I don't have any idea what people are doing out there. But I think it's still going to be there. I think that you can still navigate your way around what's already there. And at the end of the day, it is still, I'm not one of those people where, you know, I'm against Etsy. I think their core and their mission was great. I think it's changed a little bit, obviously, because it's an entity. I mean, they, you know, they're bigger than they probably ever knew that they were going to be. But I think that you can still navigate those waters. And I think that you can keep finding other revenue streams. If you're not liking it, or if you're scared, you know, you just have to work twice as hard to find the customers that Etsy could provide you.
And that's not easy.
It's not, no. It's one of those reasons why I'll always keep my Etsy shop open. It was the first place where I started selling online. And it reaches a huge marketplace that, you know, I could never organically, well, I'm sure I could organically get on my own, but, you know, I got a lot of my customers there and I got a lot of repeat customers there. So it has a lot of benefits, but I just keep going back to, like, I don't know who else is really that concerned about it, unless you're reading business blogs or, you know, like money magazines. I don't think the general consumer is super concerned about all the other stuff. So if they find you and they see you and they like you and they're looking for something cool, any random person is probably still going to go up and buy your items from Etsy and never know about any of this other stuff. Like, they just see it as a big online marketplace like that. Yeah. They don't know all the dirty nitty gritty stuff.
They don't know what's going on in the family.
Yeah.
Megan, what's the best way people can reach you if they want to get in touch with you or find out more about Craftin' Outlaws or the Midwest Craft Con?
Really, the best place is through Craftin' Outlaws. So if you go to www.craftinoutlaws.com and to the About page, it's got links to my Stinky Bomb shop. It's got links to, my personal email or my business email. You can also find me, on Instagram at Megan Stinky Green. And really, Crafts and Outlaws is the best way to find me. And I try to answer emails as quickly as I can, but sometimes I get lazy.
Or busy.
Or busy, or lazy. There's a lot of lazy.
Megan, thank you so much for taking time out to come and talk with me on the podcast. And I appreciate you sharing about Midwest Craft Con. I'm going to keep mentioning it as it gets closer to that time, so it stays on people's minds. And again,
thank you.
you're welcome. For anyone who wants to go, it's February 16th to the 18th, 2018, and tickets are on sale right now. I forgot what the price was, but I will link to it so you can go and check that out and decide if it's something that you want to make part of your next year's educational portfolio and for your business. And Megan, thank you for being on the podcast again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
And I thank you for listening to the podcast. I will be back next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.